Now I can hear it, but I got, oops.
All right, we'll get started in just a minute here, just waiting for some more people to join.
Lois, am I muted?
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Want to be conscious of time here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Rita Williams. I'm the Oncology Psychosocial Services Manager here with BB Healthcare. On behalf of the Sussex County Survivorship Coalition, I'd like to welcome you to the 2022 Sussex County Survivorship Conference. We're so grateful to have you all join us this morning and look forward to hopefully returning in person next year. Today, we have 3 different presenters lined up who will share their expertise on various topics in the integrative health and well-being arena, starting with Dr. Pallav Mehta. We'll then take a short 5-minute stretch break that will be followed by a session with Dr. Carolyn Trasko at 10:05, and then wrapping up with a sound healing with Mary Lampert at 11. You'll also have the opportunity to meet my colleagues, my coalition colleagues over the course of the program. Before we get started, though, I'd like to just quickly go over some housekeeping items for the day since we are a virtual program. So first, please mute your lines if you've not already done so. We do ask that only the presenter and the host are unmuted. Also, this program, as you may have heard when you were logging on, is being recorded. So if you'd like to not be recorded, we ask that you simply just turn off your video and you can still enjoy and get the most out of the presentation. So no worries. As you may have seen in the flyer, we are also going to be doing a raffle for 3 wonderful gift baskets. So these baskets include various items like I think we have Pampered Chef quick cookers donated by the ACS, cancer fighting kitchen cookbooks, gift cards, mind body items like essential oil diffuser, Dr. Mehta's recently published book, After Cancer Care. So everyone who's been registered will be entered into the raffle and will reach out to the selected individuals by Monday. By email. After the presentations, for each presentation afterwards, we'll have some time for Q&A. We do ask that you enter your questions into the chat. So our moderators will then read through the questions. The presenters will get through as many questions as they can. We just ask that you refrain from asking specific questions about your health or your diagnosis or specific questions regarding COVID-19. And lastly, if you have any headphones handy, you may want to grab them during the break, as it can definitely help enhance the virtual sound experience with the sound healing, but you certainly don't need them to participate. And I think that's it. With that, I'll turn it over to Allison Gill to introduce our first presenter.
Thank you, Rita, and good morning, everybody. I hope you are enjoying the sunshine today as we look forward to springtime. My name is Allison Gill. I am a Senior Manager for Cancer Control Strategic Partnerships at Your American Cancer Society, and super glad to be here and hope to see everybody next year in person. I get the honor of welcoming our first presenter this morning, Dr. Mehta. He is a medical oncologist and hematologist and is board certified in medical oncology, hematology, and integrative medicine. He is the Director of Integrative Oncology and Practice Development at the MD Anderson Cancer Center at Cooper in Camden, New Jersey, and is an Assistant Professor of Medicine, the Division of Hematology Oncology at Cooper Medical School, Rowan University. He's a member of the Living Beyond Breast Cancer Board of Directors. Dr. Mehta is also Chief of Division of Hematology Oncology and the Medical Director of the COC accredited Charles A. and Betty Bott Cancer Center at Holy Redeemer Hospital in Meadowbrook, Pennsylvania. Now a collaborating partner for the MD Anderson Cancer Center and MD Anderson Cancer Center at Cooper. He's the Cancer Liaison Physician to the Commission on Cancer at Holy Redeemer Hospital and is also a faculty lecturer at Cooper Medical School. He's authored several journal articles, reviews, and clinical trials, in which he has served both as the author and the local principal investigator. He's also developed a broad integrative medicine initiative aimed at people with cancer. Dr. Mehta has been invited to speak nationally on the topic of healthy lifestyle and cancer, and serves as a consultant and speaker for several international oncology-related companies pertaining to breast cancer, genetics, and molecular profiling. He's the co-author of After Cancer Care, the definitive self-care guide to getting and staying well for patients after cancer, which was published in 2015. Dr. Mehta firmly believes in utilizing standard of care and cutting-edge cancer therapies, while also understanding the importance of the patient as a human being, incorporating topics such as optimizing nutrition or exercise with every patient he meets. Dr. Mehta, welcome, and we are so excited to have you here today. I'll turn it over to you to share your screen and get us going.
Great. Thanks for having me. And I think we have a lot of ground to cover, because these last 2 years have certainly been chaotic and interesting for most of us. Let me. You would think after 2 years, I would get all the screen sharing correct. Let's see here. Okay. I think I have this. One second. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you're seeing the slide.
We are. Thank you, Dr. Mehta. It's
Okay.
perfect.
Great. So health in the time of COVID. Healthcare. COVID has changed how we look at healthcare, how we look at our own individual health, and particularly for my patients. So I am a medical oncologist, primarily treating breast cancer. So the questions I've been getting, the approach to healthcare that I've been seeing over these last couple of years, I think we in healthcare have learned a lot and are continuing to learn a lot. And so, as I said, there's a lot of information on these slides, and I believe it is being recorded, so hopefully it can be referred back to. So essential workers, obviously in healthcare, healthcare workers were defined as essential workers, but there were so many others that were essential during this time and continue to be. So just a couple of just factoids about COVID. Clearly, I don't want to get too far into the peculiarities of the virus, but 450 million cases so far that we actually know about. There's some evidence suggesting that at least twice, potentially 3 times as many that we don't know about, particularly recently, as patients aren't really testing, or if they are testing, they're not reporting it. 6 million deaths almost. This is all worldwide. And clearly the virus has changed everything, toppling the world order, political strife, as we know, both domestically and internationally. And every aspect of our lives has been affected. We just got an email yesterday from I have a girl in college, a boy in high school, and a girl in middle school. And each of them has been affected differently, but we got an email from the school that masks are coming off next week, which is the first time in 2 years. So we're all excited. And there's been a lot of uncertainty, particularly for our patients with cancer. I do want to mention that what happened here in December of 2020 is a medical miracle, and I think because of some of the political machinations being what they were, it got glossed over a little bit how impressive this was. In less than a year from the identification of the genetic code of this virus, we had a vaccine, and now 10 vaccines have been granted emergency use listing by the World Health Organization, and there are almost 300 active or completed clinical trials. And you can see here that there's 4 different types of vaccines. The ones in the US, as we know, are the RNA vaccines. Those are the actual names for the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine. Spikevax, which I think is a great name, and Comirnaty, I think this is important for us to, this is just from the CDC. You know, as more people are eligible for the vaccine of different ages and those who are immunocompromised and not immunocompromised, there's a lot of confusion about when patients can get another dose, should they get another dose, should they get a booster, should they get a second booster, et cetera. So this is, we have this in our cancer center, and we follow CDC guidelines as most accredited cancer centers do. And remember, the variants are inevitable. All viruses have variants that emerge. The most recent one, Omicron, it appears to be more infectious, but partly that's because it seems to have merged with the common cold virus, but it is less dangerous, particularly if you're vaccinated and boosted. And so the focus of this talk is, what else can someone do who has had breast cancer or is dealing with breast cancer or has cancer in general to stay healthy? So just a brief intro into my story. So I emigrated to the United States around 6 years old, and we lived, and I grew up in an apartment in New York City, where the five of us, my grandmother, my parents, and my sister lived. We all slept in one room. And I remember every morning when I was going to school and learning English, I would come out of the bedroom and this would be waiting for me. This was a concoction that my grandmother made. I still to this day can smell it and taste it, and it neither smelled nor tasted good. But it was whole milk, crushed almonds, and turmeric. And my grandmother would say that the turmeric cleans your blood, the almonds clean your brain, and the milk gives you strength. And I think she was probably right on all fronts. And so now flash forward. This is with just a few edits, an actual patient of mine from a few years ago. She was a 37-year-old woman who noticed a sudden red swollen breast at 34 weeks into her pregnancy diagnosis. And she was found to have, as those in the breast cancer community can see from the photo, an inflammatory breast cancer, also known as a stage 3C breast cancer. She was induced at 36 weeks of pregnancy. And then almost immediately after, we started 4 months of chemotherapy. She underwent a double mastectomy, a full axillary lymph node dissection, which is standard of care, and radiation. At that time, given her young age, we did genetic testing. She was found to be positive for the BRCA gene. So she had her ovaries removed and then started treatment with an anti-estrogen medication. She then underwent her reconstruction, but the implant failed and had to be removed. 1 year later, she is depressed, anxious, and irritable from menopause. Her hair and her nails are not growing back. She certainly doesn't feel like she bonded with her baby. She has neuropathy from chemo. The right chest appearance, she describes it as a gunshot wound to her chest. She's gained 25 pounds. Everything hurts from the treatments we're giving her. Her heart function has actually dropped from chemo. And to top this off, and this is not an exaggeration, I found out later she was in bankruptcy and probably getting a divorce. So here's Melissa's PET scan. She's cancer-free, but is she really healthy? And this is something as an oncologist I struggle with, this idea of health. You know, what is it? What is health? And this is, I think, probably the best definition of it is from the World Health Organization's initial constitution from 1946. Health is a state of complete physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And we would do well in medicine to remember this. The three pillars of wellness, in my opinion, is sort of what you take in, nutrition, supplements, et cetera, how active you are, and your emotional and spiritual health. So what is going on with cancer? Why are we seeing so much more of it? And these are the four reasons. Firstly, we're just diagnosing it more. We're testing more people, getting more CAT scans and MRIs, and so incidentally finding things. The population is aging, and we know that cancer, for the most part, is the average age is actually 66 of all cancer in the country. We know that thankfully more people are being cured of cancer, so there's more survivors, and there are more who are living with cancer. Even those with metastatic cancer, stage 4 cancer, are living much longer and more productive lives. So is it bad luck, or is it the environment? It's an interesting question, and there's data on both sides, but there has been research published in Nature a few years back that used several approaches with stem cell experiments and computational modeling, molecular fingerprinting, to try to look at cancer risk. And interestingly, they found that 70 to 90% of all cancers may be due to extrinsic factors and not just bad luck. Now, around that time, another study came out that said the opposite. So I think the jury's out, but clearly there is a large portion of cancer that that we can attribute to something else from the outside and not just our genes. So the NCCN guidelines, this is, so up until about 5 or 6 years ago, even this simple guideline wasn't there in our National Comprehensive Cancer Center, Comprehensive Cancer Network guidelines. So, I mean, this is something I think we all know: plant-based foods, limit processed meats, refined sugar, don't drink more than once a night, and actually for breast cancer, as we'll talk about, a little less than that, and maintain a healthy BMI. But we often look to our physicians for advice on this, and I would argue that maybe we're not necessarily as physicians trained to answer these questions well. This is my own personal medical training. I graduated medical school a little over 20 years ago, 22 years ago this year. And this is in 10 years of medical training, 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, 3 years of fellowship. This was how much I learned about nutrition and exercise. It was about a 2-week course over the winter. And most of us probably didn't even attend class because we were so exhausted from all our other courses. The rest of it is are things that I've had to learn myself that I've been interested in. As I got board certified in integrative medicine for the purpose of understanding things like nutrition, health, and how that impacts cancer, what I also experienced is a litany of what is under the guise of integrative therapies, and the terminology of integrative, alternative, holistic, et cetera. I think there's a lot of verbiage that's used that gets confused, but I won't be talking about these things. These are what I call alternative therapy, alternative implying that it's being done in lieu of standard therapy, integrative meaning that it's in conjunction with standard therapy. These are things that many of you have probably seen as you get a breast cancer diagnosis and immediately go on the internet, and it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole. And unfortunately, I have many patients who have over the years, and I'm collecting my own data and hopefully publishing it soon, on patients that have decided to go down the wrong path with their cancer therapy, from curable disease to incurable disease, and other scenarios that were harmful. So this is a word of caution around alternative and even integrative medicine. Beware of those who invent a fake crisis and then profess to have the solution. Fancy scientific sounding words aren't necessarily legitimate. We can tell you that you have some problem and then tell you we have the solution to that problem, and a solution that we happen to sell. And when patients have cancer and they're desperate, they are apt to believe it. So just be cautious. Just because we can measure something doesn't mean we know what to do with the result. I would say at least once a week, I have patients come to me who say that they have some blood work that was done by someone that has all these fancy tests and results that tell us that their hormone levels are this and that. It's not to say all of it's nonsense, it's not, but we have to be careful about this sort of stuff because we can sometimes harm people by giving them the wrong treatments based on those results. And remember, just because something is old doesn't mean it's better. I mean, we've learned a lot over the last couple of thousand years. We know the Earth is no longer flat, and demons maybe aren't as prevalent. Well, they probably still are prevalent in other ways. And it's not curses and our constitution necessarily that causes all disease. Epigenetics is actually a field of research that is getting a lot of attention over the last decade or so. And we think this might be at the heart of how lifestyle, nutrition, exercise seems to impact cancer risk. Epigenetics, to put it simply, is how your cells read your genes. The genes are like the blueprint, but it's like giving a blueprint to 5 architects. You'll get 5 slightly different houses. So epigenetic changes and how changes happen after DNA is formed and how these genes are actually expressed seem to be important in disease. So let's just start with nutrition. COVID, because of all of these issues, from personal finances to restaurant closures and crowds and supply chain, there has been a lot less eating out, and often as a result, that is an opportunity to better control what you eat. Philadelphia, actually, I think this says top 20 unhealthiest, but I believe I just saw recently it was almost in the top 5 of large cities. All of these things are making me hungry, but clearly not good for you. What is good for you? This new American plate. So this is from the American Institute of Cancer Research. The food pyramid, it kind of went away without a lot of hoopla, but over 10 years ago, the food pyramid was taken out of our food recommendations. The new American plate is really about portion and proportion. Plant-based foods, non-starchy vegetables. On the left was the old recommendation. You can see a large portion of meat, a large portion of those mashed potatoes. And on the right, you see the vegetables are the larger portions. The meat is a smaller amount. This is also from the American Institute of Cancer Research. Here are foods that each and every one have specific nutrients that seem to have cancer-fighting properties. Certainly doesn't mean you have to have all of these all the time in your diet, but if you can incorporate these things into your diet, even over the course of a week, pick half this list and make sure you get half this list, you're already doing more than probably 90 to 95% of the US population. The World Health Organization has an arm called the International Agency on the Research of Cancer. They listed processed meat as a Category 1 carcinogen a few years back. Category 1 is asbestos, benzene, things that are known cancer-causing substances. The bacon industry was, not surprisingly, quite upset about this, but there does appear to be a substance, even in red meat in general, even if it's not processed, that promotes inflammation and carcinogenesis. Sugar, I think this is what I hear the most, this idea that sugar feeds cancer. It certainly isn't that simple, but there are some connections that are being looked at. So sugarcane it now has the highest yearly production of all cash crops. You can see here that the average intake of sugar per year per person in the US has significantly increased. And sugar does, particularly in our breast cancer population, it does some pretty, or high amounts of sugar does some pretty terrible things. It has been clearly associated with worsening mental health, in menopause, more irritability and fogginess. In older women, we're seeing more issues with cognitive decline. Weight gain, there is almost no way to lose weight in women of a certain age without limiting how sugar without limiting refined sugar and its impact on insulin. The connection we think between sugar and cancer has to do with this compound called IGF-1. So when you ingest either a simple carbohydrate or just a sucrose, a sugary, a cupcake, etc., that those compounds are immediately broken down in your gut into glucose. So that glucose gets rapidly absorbed, and as a response, your pancreas has to suddenly make insulin. And it's this rapid rise in insulin that leads to the release of this other compound in the blood called IGF-1. We think IGF-1 may be one of the links between sugar and cancer. And this is actually a syndrome that proves that. Laron syndrome, which I'm sure no one's heard of because it's not common at all. Only about 5,000 people in the world have it. There were Spanish Jews that were fleeing persecution during the 15th century who went to Ecuador. These patients ultimately, there was a consistency of genes in this population, and it led to growth hormone receptor malfunction that ultimately led to no production of this compound called IGF-1. And so one of the hallmarks of Laron syndrome is dwarfism. So you see that these people are actually even shorter than what we would generally look at as achondroplasia. But what's interesting about this population is that when you look at worldwide, the incidence of cancer is about 1 in 3. But in almost 5,000 patients with Laron syndrome who don't make IGF-1, there's almost not a single case of someone dying of cancer. Interestingly, almost no diabetes either, despite this high BMI. So IGF-1 and cancer, and frankly, IGF-1 and disease in general, needs to be looked at more and does appear to be getting more attention. Alcohol, as I mentioned, we know that alcohol increases the risk for head and neck, esophageal, breast and colon cancer. The UK Million Women study, which was done a few years back, which showed that for every 10-gram increase per day, 10 grams is about a serving, not quite, but almost a serving of alcohol. There was a 12% increased risk of breast cancer. So what is a serving? A serving is about 4 to 5 ounces of wine. It's a shot of liquor or 12 ounces of beer. So for every 1 serving increase per day, it did appear to increase the risk of breast cancer. There has been data now since showing that for breast cancer survivors, that more than 3 to 4 servings per week may increase recurrence risk. And probably not just recurrence risk, but risk of death from breast cancer. Organic. This is another question that I get a lot of, which is organic food better? Should everything be organic? It is certainly easier to get organic foods nowadays than it used to be. Even my local Acme has an organic section now, which 10 years ago clearly was not the case. This, many of you have seen this. This is from the Environmental Working Group, which, by the way, has a great website kind of detailing different foods and different toxins. The Dirty Dozen is a list that is compiled every year by the EWG. And what they do is they take various crops and they wash them the way you would at home, and then they test them. And then they test them for amounts of pesticides, of herbicides. And these 12, this is 2020's list, these 12 had the most pesticides and herbicides in them. So the idea is if you want to sort of get the most bang for your buck from the standpoint of organic foods, these are the foods that you should get organic. On the other side of it is something called a Clean 15, which is a list of 15 foods that really don't need organic. The majority of those are ones that you're not eating the skin, bananas, melons, etc. So there's your Clean 15 for 2020. But is organic food better? This was always a subject of debate In 2018, for the first time, there was a large study published in France, published in JAMA, a major medical journal. 70,000 people, mostly women. These were mostly younger women. The average age was 44. And like most dietary studies, the volunteers have to self-report their intake. So there are certainly some biases there. But they reported their intake of organic food, and then they divided these people up into 3 categories: never, or occasionally, or most of the time. And what they found is that for those who had the highest intake of organic versus lowest, there was a 25% reduction in cancer risk. Now, these are women who did not have cancer, so these were healthy volunteers, but clearly appeared to be a correlation. And they did try to correct for other things like lifestyle, exercise, weight, etc. GMOs is something that also I think is misunderstood, but gets a lot of attention. Genetically modified organisms. Now, not all GMOs are bad. I mean, we need to modify organisms to increase crop yields, and in certain parts of the world, it's essential to feed people. However, what's happened in various parts of the world, particularly in the United States, is that these crops have been modified to become resistant to herbicides, because it's a lot easier to just spray an entire field with herbicide than have to try to do it more specifically. So what that means is when you spray everything and you make the crop resistant to herbicide, there's a component in that herbicide called glyphosate, which gets absorbed, and so the glyphosate is currently a category 2A human carcinogen. You may have heard that there was a fairly large lawsuit against a major food company recently that the company had to pay out billions of dollars around a specific diagnosis of lymphoma and other cancers. And unlike the U.S., unlike 64 other developed countries, the U.S. FDA still does not mandate labeling of genetically modified foods. As you can see here, the food lobby spends way more than the pro-labeling lobby. Is it a cancer causer? Is it a hormone disruptor? We're not completely sure, but clearly there seems to be some impact on the gut and on hormones. I was referring to Bayer that had to pay out $10 billion recently to settle over 95,000 cases. And clearly glyphosate seems to increase non-Hodgkin's lymphoma risk and potentially a 13-fold increased risk of ER-positive, estrogen-positive breast cancer. I do want to mention toxins. This is another thing. How can we sort of clean our lives of various toxins? Now, you can't avoid toxins completely. Obviously, we're exposed to things all the time. We ingest things that are toxic. We inhale things that are toxic. And not everything is a toxin. So remember, the dose makes the poison. Any substance in high enough quantities for a long enough time in a susceptible system is harmful. So water is necessary for life, but if you give that amount of water to a baby, the baby could die. So about 45 years ago, the US passed this Toxic Substances Control Act to regulate new or already existing chemicals. The problem, of course, is that it grandfathered in 62,000 chemicals, which were never even tested. And in the history of the TSCA, only about 250 of the 85,000 chemicals have even been tested, and only 5 demonstrated to have unreasonable risk. This is quite different from what Europe does and the EU does. The EU has the REACH Act, Registration, Evaluation, and Authorization of Chemicals. Basically, the idea is that in Europe, the assumption is the chemical negatively impacts human health, and it's incumbent on the company to show that it doesn't. In the US, the chemical is deemed to be safe, and the company has to demonstrate that it's toxic. And obviously, the incentive there is not in favor of demonstrating toxicity. The company rarely will do a study to show that its chemical is dangerous to human health. I did mention this IARC. This is the organization that looks at carcinogenic risk, and these are the different categories. I do caution people when you look at this. This is the categories are based on data. So if something has a clear data for risk, for example, like processed meats is category 1 carcinogen, so is asbestos. It's not to say that the risk of that having 2 slices of bacon is like being exposed to asbestos. It just means that the strength of the evidence is the same, not the magnitude of the risk. Radon is something that I specifically got interested in because my old house that we lived in for about 7 years, when we moved, and my children were quite young then, always playing in the basement. When we moved, to sell the house, we had a radon test done, and we found that the levels were about 1,000 times higher than legal limits. So that was worrisome. Thankfully, we weren't there very long, but clearly radon is dangerous. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer, and so just get a radon test. Pennsylvania has some of the highest radon levels in the country, and 30% of homes are in this range, which is well above safety. Cosmetics is something that I get asked about a lot as a breast cancer doc, not specifically around what cosmetics, but what's safe, what's not. Rather than trying to memorize these things and drive yourself crazy looking at ingredients, my recommendation is to pick companies that do good work. And it's not really as hard as it used to be to find that. I certainly don't endorse any one company over another, but if you just do a little bit of research on that, you can find that there are definitely companies that essentially the idea is you want a company that uses the European guidelines, which unfortunately I thought I had a slide here. But so in Europe, the European Union has a Cosmetics Act that has banned over 1,300 chemicals from their cosmetics. The US has banned a total of 11. And so using US guidelines, the companies are allowed to kind of put whatever they want in their lotions and cosmetics. But European guidelines are much stricter. So if you find companies that use those guidelines, then you're in good shape. So what can you do just in the home? Again, without driving yourself crazy. The point is not to be overly obsessive about these things. And I've certainly seen my share of that with many of my patients who are breast cancer survivors. They, sometimes it really affects their quality of life because they're worrying about everything that they could be exposed to. But get BPA, BPH-free plastics. Get rid of cleaning supplies that have a danger or poison warning. Replace your nonstick pans with stainless steel. Use sunscreens that have zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. So this is actually the FDA recently made an announcement. I believe it was about 6 months ago on this, but we've known about this for years. Crack your windows, use a HEPA filter, remove your shoes. I mean, these are just get you more informed, and informed consumers lead to economic pressure on companies to do better work. I do want to mention supplements. I don't want to get too far into this because I think this is an area of hot debate. This is probably what I get asked about the most from my patients. What supplements can I take? I try to look at this as there are supplements that are helpful, others that are harmful, and others that really have little to no evidence. But remember, we do use natural products for many conditions. I mean, St. John's wort for depression, things for heart failure, hypertension. Just remember that supplements, they are not regulated by the FDA. These 3 labels, National Science Foundation, the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, and Consumer Labs are all companies that organizations that companies have to voluntarily submit their product for review. So if you see these labels, you're at least it's not contaminated and that the dose in the bottle is the dose on the bottle. this is probably one of the best examples of natural products and their benefit. This is UU2. She is probably now 90 years old. A few years back, she won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. She's neither a PhD nor MD. She was a scientist in Chairman Mao's regime during the Vietnam War. And when the North Vietnamese troops were being decimated by malaria in the jungles, he was looking for a solution. And so she and her team translated this 1700-year-old Chinese text and found that there was a product in there called the wormwood plant that seemed to have a solution for malaria. And so after lots of research, she figured out that rather than trying to boil it, you literally just soak it in warm water for days, and then you distill the water down. And ultimately, the compound that she discovered became today still the most effective treatment for Plasmodium falciparum, which is the most dangerous form of malaria. But what about supplements with COVID? So that website above is from the National Institutes of Health. So the NIH has an office of drugs and supplements. This website has a fact sheet on various supplements for COVID. I listed a few that might have some real value here. Vitamin D probably has the most data around both primary and secondary prevention. Omega-3 fatty acids, which are found primarily, the short chain omega-3s, which are found in fish oil, long chain in vegetarian sources. Probiotics, zinc, all of these may have some value. And those things at the bottom are things that do not work for COVID. Just to mention a fitness, I was a personal trainer before I was a physician. And so it's not uncommon that I would see clients who would take the elevator to the Stairmaster on the 4th floor of our gym. Very few interventions have the kind of data that exercise does, A to Z. Exercise seems to help in various aspects of health, obesity being one of the main ones, and clearly obesity is a disease of civilization, with developing nations having to deal now with both issues of malnutrition and obesity. I'm going to go through some of these slides quickly, as I want to keep an eye on the clock. The sitting disease is something that we all do a lot of lately, particularly during COVID. Essentially, what they found with this large American Cancer Society study is that women who sat more than 6 hours a day were 94% more likely to die of things like cancer and heart disease than those who sat less than 3 hours. And this was not negated by those who then went to the gym a couple of times a week. So being active all the time is how we're healthy. So set an alarm on the watch, on your phone, whatever it is, get up, walk around, even if it's for a few minutes, and then sit back down, especially in the era of Zoom and WebEx. And we know that exercise seems to impact immune function. In fact, there's an entire field of medicine known as exercise immunology. It reduces inflammatory pathways. It improves the function of various immune cells. And clearly with COVID, there does appear to be a positive impact. So things you can do, I think most of us know these things, but 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, it's about 20 minutes a day. Moderate intensity is you can talk, but you can't sing. Start slow, and remember, it's not a program, it's a change in your life. So there's little things you can do that that'll help. I have a patient who, we have a 9-floor garage at Cooper MD Anderson, and she would, when she came to see me, she would take the elevator up a couple of floors and then walk the rest to her car. She'd always park at the top, but depending on how she felt that day, she would take the elevator up the number of floors where she knew she couldn't walk up. So sometimes it was 7 floors and walking 2, sometimes it was walking the entire way up. And as we know with exercise, you can't expect every day to be great, just like dinner, which you're going to eat. Some days it's gourmet, some days it's not. But if you can do it for 6 weeks, we know that habits form in about 6 weeks. You can do it for life. And as a personal trainer, this is not my client, but my oldest client was an 84-year-old woman whose husband had passed away, and she wanted to learn how to weight train. So we taught her very carefully. Yoga is something that probably encompasses all aspects of exercise that we like, which is flexibility, balance, coordination. There's it encourages deep breathing. Clearly, there's evidence on improving sleep, anxiety, diminishing pain, so many benefits. So yoga is something we all should be incorporating, particularly those who have had a cancer diagnosis. And finally, stress, which I know others today will be talking about. Stress is probably the thing that is hardest to define. It's a state of mental tension caused by anxiety and worry in work, family, relationships. And a lot of our patients, if you really test them, do a mental health analysis, a lot of them have PTSD or PTSD-like symptoms. And I don't think we give enough attention to the issues that arise from that. We know stress has physical implications. That here's just one of many, many studies. Mice exposed to chronic stress have 30-fold higher rate of metastasis of breast cancer cells than non-stress mice. And stress has been at the forefront of life during COVID due to all of these issues, from bad news, watching news channels all the time, grief over lost friends and family, and fear and isolation and financial concerns, and all of the above. And we have to remember that there has been, when you look at these COVID deaths, I think there are so many others that are sort of indirectly related. My uncle, who was one of the healthiest 90-year-olds I've ever met, who would swim every day, every morning at 5 a.m., get up and swim, and he started some of the laughing clubs in India, and he unfortunately, due to the fact that the world shut down, he wasn't able to do all those things, and unfortunately soon after contracted COVID and passed away. And I fully believe that it was the isolation that was killing him even more than the virus. Many of you know this book, Radical Remission by Kelly Turner, where she interviewed 1,000 people with miraculous remission from cancer. And what she found is some common themes, and most were actually not physical. Letting go of negative emotions, then embracing positive ones, volunteering, trusting your intuition, connecting with spirituality. I think we would do well to probably, for anyone, cancer or otherwise, listen to some of this advice. Here's just some, I won't speak to these in particular, but these are specific integrative guidelines from our integrative breast cancer recommendations that came out a couple of years ago. Insomnia is a big issue in our patients, particularly those who have been on various treatments. Again, some guidelines and strategies that can help with that. And pain, obviously, many of our patients are dealing with both physical and existential type pain, and there are multiple strategies that can be employed, from supplements to mind-body approaches. And so, thank you, and I am happy to take questions. I know this was a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure I get across that there are things that we can do to stay healthy during these times, particularly for our patients who have cancer or who have had cancer. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. That was a wonderful presentation. Lots of great information today. Really appreciate it. Just as a reminder for everybody, if you have any questions, Please feel free to use the chat box at the bottom of your screen, or if you want to raise your hand or come off mute. Just a reminder, we're not answering questions today about specific cancer diagnosis or your own personal health conditions. But Dr. Maida, we do have a comment. Excellent presentation, exactly what they were hoping to hear for. So you hit the nail on the head today.
Great, thank you.
Great. We'll give everybody a moment here to gather their thoughts and potentially ask some questions. Okay, Dr. Maida, we do have a question. Can you talk about a few ways maybe to cope with insomnia? Maybe some suggestions.
Yeah, so I think as far as insomnia, I'd first, when a patient tells me they can't sleep, my very first question is, can you not get to sleep, or are you having trouble staying asleep? And I think those are two very different things. Our patients, particularly those on various hormone blockers, tend to have insomnia as a side effect. If they're having trouble getting to sleep, so some of the things that were on that slide around sleep hygiene, sleep hygiene sounds easy, but I think a lot of us don't do it very well. We know that blue light from our phones affects how melatonin, it essentially shuts down melatonin secretion. So as much as I try to tell my kids not to be on their devices, it's even more important for patients who are on hormonal therapy. So avoiding blue light, getting to that 66 to 68 degrees, it sounds crazy, but that actually is the ideal temperature for sleep. Room darkening is important, but then how do you get to sleep? So melatonin is not a sleep agent. Unfortunately, it's used that way a lot. Melatonin is a circadian rhythm agent. So it's great for people who have disrupted sleep cycles, night shift, jet lag. It tends to have some value in our older population because their circadian rhythms tend to be abnormal just as a function of age. But if you're going to use melatonin, don't use it like a sleep agent. Don't take it and expect to fall asleep in 30 minutes. The right way to use melatonin is actually to try to mimic what the pineal gland normally secretes, which the pineal gland melatonin secretion begins about 2 to 3 hours before you sleep. So ideally, take the melatonin about 2 hours before. And then, if you're following all the other rules, don't exercise too late, don't have large meals at night. Another supplement that I found valuable, non-habit forming, and effective is valerian. Valerian root in capsule form is where you get sufficient dosing for sleep. I'm going to warn people, it doesn't smell very good, the bottle, but you titrate up. Try a capsule, see how that goes. 2 capsules, 3. It also, by the way, valerian has an anti-anxiety component to it. My 20-year-old daughter, who was having some issues with anxiety, rather than an anxiety medication, I asked her to try valerian, and it was about a year ago, and she takes it whenever she feels a little, stress coming on. She also takes it for sleep many nights, and it works great for her. So if it's trouble staying asleep, that often, again, it is an issue of some of these medications. That often it speaks more to anxiety. Once you wake up, I think for a lot of us, thoughts start spinning. And so trying to deal with anxiety, I always feel that every patient with a breast cancer diagnosis should be seeing a mental health specialist, at least initially, if not during and after their treatment. And so dealing with anxiety, can help. Obviously, no easy solution there. I'm not opposed to medications either to help, particularly at night. Low dose benzodiazepines like Ativan and Xanax can help as long as you don't take them every night. If you take them occasionally, they can be quite helpful. And I see valerian was spelled out correctly. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So just a couple comments in here. Again, wonderful presentation. If it's okay with you, we'll share the slides and the recording of the presentation with our guests so that they can get that good list of the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. Dr. Maida, could you talk to us a little bit about some of the supplements of turmeric and chia seeds and flax seeds, and how should somebody maybe incorporate that into their daily diet?
Yeah, so again, I think we want to individualize these things just like medications. I want to be careful, particularly in breast cancer. If patients are on chemotherapy or they're on radiation or certain hormone therapies, we want to be cautious about supplements that can potentially interact with treatments or harm them. The one supplement that I think every patient with, and probably every woman should be on, is vitamin D. Vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. It impacts various aspects of our health, from our immune function to inflammatory pathways to gut health to bone health and mental health. I would recommend that you ask your treating physicians to check a vitamin D level on you. Very easy to do. It's more about your level than it is about the dose you take. I have patients that will come in and say, well, I take 10,000 a day, which for many people, that's going to be way too much. So there is a therapeutic window level of about, I tend to tell my patients to stay in that 40 to 60 range. Above 80, you start to get into potentially reversing some of the inflammatory benefits, and you get potentially some pro-inflammatory activity above 80, particularly as you get closer to 100. So staying in those levels. You mentioned chia and flax. Chia and flax have what's known as the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. Long-chain omegas and short-chain omegas are a little different. The long-chain omegas, they're both helpful, but long-chain omega-3s are more for sort of cholesterol management, heart health, et cetera. The short chain are the more anti-inflammatory ones. I'm a big proponent of short chain omega-3s. They are found almost exclusively in marine sources. So fish oil primarily has the best balance. Krill oil has a little bit of an imbalance between the EPA and DHA. For the strict vegans who really want to still get short chain, algae oil is a new kid on the block that can help get you some of those short chains. But I think fish oil, I think, is a really important supplement many of us should be on. The problem, of course, is at higher doses, it does have some blood thinning effect. So anytime you do anything like that, please check with your physicians, around making sure you're not on blood thinners. Even aspirin, sometimes with fish oil, you can have more bruising and bleeding. So you want to be careful with that. The third one, probiotics. I'm a big proponent of probiotics for my patients, particularly those who've been on chemotherapy or who have had chemo in the past. We know that a lot of the various chemo drugs seem to decimate the mucosal lining of the gut. And when you do that, the good bacteria tend to die off faster than the bad ones. So probiotics help replenish that. We have some research going on at Cooper MD Anderson around how the gut microbiome impacts tolerance and benefit of various chemotherapeutics. So clearly, that story around immune function in the gut is one that's being told very recently.
Great, thank you. And for those who are maybe not watching the chat, do take in a moment here. The links for that Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen were put into the chat box. So,
and the EWG in general, as I mentioned, I think it's a great, I have no financial connection with the EWG, but I think they're a great source of information around all sorts of things related to not just foods, but environmental risks.
Wonderful. Well, I'm not seeing additional questions come in, and we are right at the top of the hour, which according to our agenda, we are going to take a 5-minute break here. And I will say, former dear colleague at the American Cancer Society, registered dietitian Colleen Doyle, always recommended during conferences and meetings, during the switch of speakers, get up, stretch, move around. So right in tune with the information you shared with us not too long ago. Rita, do you want to take us into our break here?
Sure. No, thank you, Allison. Yes, so everybody, we are going to reconvene in just a few minutes. And Dr. Mehta, thank you so much for your time. Just want to reiterate that was a wonderful presentation. And we will see everyone back in just a few minutes for Dr. Tresco.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we're just going to give everyone just about one more minute. If everyone can start gathering back, that would be great. All right, and for anyone who maybe joined us later in the presentation, I just want to put out a reminder. We are recording this presentation, so if you would like to not be recorded, you certainly can just keep your video off and enjoy the rest of the presentation. I just want to make sure everyone is aware about that. And if you are also not, I think everyone looks like they're muted, but if you're not muted, and we just ask that you keep yourself on mute, and the presenter and the host will be on unmute. And with that, we can go ahead and get started with Dr. Trasco. I'm going to introduce Connie Holdridge, who will be introducing our next speaker.
Thank you, Rita. I'm Connie Holdridge. I am with the Delaware Breast Cancer Coalition. I'm the Program Director of Sussex County Survivorship and Education. I wanted to thank our previous presenter. That was wonderful. And I wanted to say, I hope everybody saw the commercial. The Sussex County Survivorship Coalition is who's putting this program on. And that consists of 4 partners: the American Cancer Society, the Cancer Support Community, Delaware Breast Cancer Coalition, and BB Healthcare. So I just wanted you to understand this is a collaborative venture in Sussex County, and we think that it's very successful. So I am going to talk about Dr. Carolyn Trasco, known to her clients as Dr. Carolyn Trasco, PhD, LCSW, NBC, HWC, CHTP, lots of initials, graduated from Saybrook University, with a doctorate in mind-body medicine, and has her own practice for 20 years. She is the founder of Empowered Wellness, with a physical location in Sussex County, Delaware, along with an online virtual practice. In 2021, she augmented her integrative mental health toolbox by becoming a national board-certified health and wellness coach. She adds this to her over 30 years of specialized training in trauma, addictions, integrative health, energy medicine healing, Ayurvedic medicine, and traditional Chinese medicine. She has used her educational, clinical, and lived experiences to create a holistic model of care that honors the whole person: mind, body, brain, and spirit. Dr. Carolyn is on a mission to help more people experience transformational healing. Integrative and functional medicine is becoming the personalized medicine for the 21st century. At Empowered Wellness, we take the time to explore underlying causes of illness that help us uncover the root causes of multiple symptoms to support our clients in creating a personalized self-care plan, because there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all when it comes to optimizing health and wellness. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Carolyn. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Connie, for that introduction. I am going to share my screen. And I am beyond thrilled and honored to be here with all of you today. Let me just start with that, because being able to follow someone as inspiring as Dr. Mehta is also a blessing. I am here really to be able to share my model of integrative mental health with all of you. And as Connie said in the introduction, I started my career about 30 years ago in behavioral health medicine and addictions. And I feel that my initial training, while I honor it, was remiss in helping us to understand the importance of the body. And never mind the fact that we never talked about spirit in any of, sorry about that, in any of my earlier training. So for me, this is a model of transformational healing because it's very personalized and individualized. And I say everything that I'm going to share with you here today. So I'm going to share slides and talk to you a little bit, but also my own style for those of you maybe who have met me before. I will also lead you in a mind-body medicine intervention before I'm through today, because I believe in lived experiences. So even though I have this jumble of alphabet soup after my name, that is really has been my journey, right? My journey to be able to learn more of these methods, more of these tools, more of these practices that I can be able to incorporate into my healing medicine with people. But in truth, I have learned the most from the clients that I have had the blessing to work with over my past of 30 plus years in doing this work. And with that, what I say to people is everything that I share is really an offering for you today. It's a suggestion. It is not a prescription. So I just invite you really to sit and notice, to whatever degree you can, to what parts of you might be just a little bit open and curious about what does it mean to really use integrative mental health in your life. Because as people have said since COVID, mental health is certainly on the forefront of everybody's mind. And so for me, my version of integrative mental health really encapsulates mind, body, brain, and spirit. That means to the best of my ability, I live this medicine, so I'm present to whatever degree is capable in any moment on all of those levels. But I'm also helping to coach and teach any of my clients on how to really harness the wisdom that lives within our mind, our body, our brain, and our spirit. Because our mind, we know, is that area of ourself where our thoughts and our beliefs and our attitudes live. That is often the place where we get trapped if you experience things like anxiety or worry. Our body is the place we feel our feelings, right? And I say to people, there is so much wisdom in your body. But we also know from mind body medicine that the issues are in the tissues. And so what happens in my work is I help people who experience unresolved emotional issues, perhaps due to unresolved trauma, maybe even as far back as childhood, be able to help them understand what are the messages that are in your body, because those messages are often showing up as symptoms, not only of mental health, but also connected to your medical health. And being able to help you understand more things about your brain, like your survival response. Because as Dr. Mehta pointed out, even if you felt like you managed stress fairly well in your life before COVID, hey, there's no textbook for this yet, right? The textbooks will be written as a result of all of us living the COVID experience. Every single one of us has been forced to really exercise our own stress response, good, bad, and indifferent. And being able to really bring in spirit is something that I know traditional medicine is really not comfortable doing. And I say to people, I am a deeply integrative practitioner. That means I try to take the best of my 30 years of experience in traditional psychology, clinical social work, sociology, and even the trainings that I've had in traditional medicine, and I tie it together with the additional training that I've had in other world medicines through my doctoral training. So for me, I see my work as a bridge between the worlds. And these are really the pillars that make up my integrative mental health model. The neuroscience piece is really important. For so many people, better understanding how our brain works can actually help us do what I call ride the wave of our nervous system better when we experience the things that make us overwhelmed, or maybe put us not only in this perpetual fight or flight mode, but maybe cause us to freeze, like that actual deer in the headlights that keep us stuck, frozen. Now, Ayurvedic medicine, what a graceful medicine this is to me. And Dr. Mehta kind of hinted at it a little bit at the beginning of his presentation. Ayurvedic medicine is thousands of years old. It is part of a medicine in India. And what is so beautiful is that Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, which is on the screen, abbreviated as TCM, as well as indigenous or even Native American medicine, they never separated out spirit from their medicine model. And I think that is just literally what we call divine, because one of that set of credentials at the end of my name is that I'm a national certified healing touch practitioner. And healing touch medicine is this medically approved model of energy medicine that involves actual hands-on working with the energy of the body, as well as acting as a conduit myself as the practitioner, helping to clear blockages of energy in a person's body. And I will tell you that this really is about, first and foremost, focusing here in our mindset. Not only, like I said, in these values, attitudes, and beliefs, but really also sitting with ourselves openly and honestly, asking ourselves, how comfortable am I with even learning, hearing, never mind practicing, right? That's another layer deep of this type of integrative medicine. And again, I will say, as even maybe call it a disclaimer, I have training and awareness in many, many tools. I am not here to tell you there is one right tool, not at all. In fact, I suspect there are thousands of right tools. And so for me, I look at it as I am open to learning different tools, sharing them with clients and with audiences like yourself that are open to learning more about it, maybe practicing a few, and then you trying it on for size and seeing what really works for you in conjunction with the other things you're already doing to improve your own overall health and wellness. And so I really wouldn't be true to what I say, like talking my talk, walking my walk, if I didn't lead with spirit medicine, because I've been working to do that more so in 2022 than I have ever before in my career. And for some people, spirit medicine sounds woo-woo, weird, different, right? They're not sure, I don't know how I feel about this. That's okay. Welcome. Because all of your experiences are welcome in this space that we are creating between us in this virtual environment, right? So what is today? Today for the lunar and moon cycle. So for some people out there, they really are more into science of things. And I say, guess what? Understanding your own connection to the lunar cycles matters. For some people, that becomes something they're curious about. So today is March 4th. It is identified as the waxing crescent moon phase. That's considered the second phase of 8. Scientifically, when the lit part of the moon actually increases, which you can see there in the middle of the screen. But guess what? Spiritually, it is a time to help us bring about change, create opportunities. And I thought, of course, the universe is divinely timed, because today is the day of this conference when I'm doing this presentation. And I am all about sharing even my energy. Like, I'm not going to lie. I wish we were in person, because then I could really move around as much as I want to move around, because I completely am passionate about this type of medicine and want to share it with as many people as possible. And it's what I call my geek out zone, right? So I am so excited that we're sharing my geek out zone together. And I love this moon phase because it's a time to focus on establishing goals for yourself, but also for taking action. And it's a time for being able to tune into ourselves, to take responsibility and to own our decisions. And that's why I've called a lot of my programs Empowered Wellness, because very often my clients, especially those who've experienced trauma, and trauma, by the way, is not only based on our early childhood traumatic experiences, but also our major traumatic life events that include all those major abuses like physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, but also medical trauma, including a life-changing diagnosis, like something like cancer. You have very likely experienced so many moments in your life where you did not feel empowered. You felt the opposite, which is what we call disempowered, where you feel like you don't have a voice, you don't have control. And so I thought, well, let's bring in all of the connector themes from all of these other world medicines that I have had the blessing to be trained in, including Native American spirit medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, and of course, some of the things like I've said with traditional psychology. And so Ayurvedic medicine, it basically employs so many of these natural medicine strategies. And it includes being able to bring harmony to ourselves through a variety of opportunities like our body, diet, herbs, minerals, exercise, meditation, yoga. Many people are familiar with yoga, but are not always aware that it is a big piece of Ayurvedic medicine. Mental hygiene, like I said, is a part of their medicine. Sound, which I'm really excited, we're going to be able to do some sound therapy after my presentation, is another big piece of the medicine in Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurvedic medicine recognizes the importance of the mind and emotion in all health and what we call dis-ease or disease. And the real major focus in Ayurveda is being able to maintain, really achieve and maintain optimal health through our daily care. And I look at it as I'm a practitioner trying to help promote daily self-care. And so you will hopefully find in your email or even available after the presentation, some of the attachment PDFs that I've created. One is your own weekly self-care plan that you can fill in as a way to give you structure going forward, you know, to be able to, any takeaways for you, things you're already practicing in your life that improve your self-care, and maybe hopefully some of the things that you will even have heard or experienced in the course of the presentation today that you can begin to be curious about and experiment with more on a daily basis. And so Ayurveda is a medicine that it also incorporates these three doshas, kapha, pitta, vata. Kapha is earth, pitta is fire, vata is air. And in Ayurveda, they believe that everything consists in some way constitutionally of a combination of these three doshas. I won't go into in-depth Ayurvedic medicine. In fact, we probably could spend a year going over it because it is a whole medical system. But I want you to just understand that what I see primarily for people that are experiencing trauma on various levels is they have what is called a vata imbalance, which is that imbalance of air, and it tends to show up as anxiety, fear, ruminating thinking, pervasive thoughts, even negative self-talk. It shows up in a lot of ways in their body as well, but they may not tune into that as well. And so being able to help you through an Ayurvedic perspective, not only helping you tune into the sacred nature of the breath is a very, very important step, because the breath is something we take with us always. And I say to people, I have like really expensive biofeedback equipment, don't get me wrong, that I love. And I'm all about following our own care through apps, etc., and devices. But I also know personally, I am totally more likely to follow self-care practices that are things I can take with me all the time. So I thought, well, tuning into my breath is something that I can remind myself to do everywhere, anytime, and I don't even need special equipment for it. And so another really big piece of Ayurvedic medicine are what you see here on the screen are the chakras. So there are 7 major chakras. And I will say, like many other integrative medicine practitioners, as well as energy medicine practitioners that I follow, we find in our work that a large proportion of our clients experience blockages in their life, unresolved issues in the root and sacral chakras. So those are the first and second chakras. And what does that mean? Well, that means things on that mind, body, brain, spirit level. And what I notice on that spiritual level is that people struggle to have a right to be, a right to exist. Due to their life experiences, they may be uncomfortable being seen, felt, and heard. And then even depending sometimes on the care they might receive in a more traditional setting, Sadly, that is what gets repeated. And I don't think our traditional care setting means to do that. But I do think that being able to give yourself a voice as the consumer, the patient, the client, because we are all clients of someone and of something, the more we can practice clearing those blockages in our lower chakras, the more we can vibrate at a higher level here at that fifth chakra, which you'll see in the blue, the lighter blue on the screen, is actually identified with your throat, having a voice. Now, part of my research also looked at the impact of mind-body medicine with women that had thyroid disease. Now, I chose thyroid disease because the thyroid is a master regulator gland in the body that can mimic an awful lot of mental health issues. And because when I learned the statistics that 1 in 7 women have a thyroid issue, I also thought, well, how ironic. It's synchronistic, right? That happens to be the area where when we're able to clear our lower blockages, our unresolved traumas, et cetera, in our mind, body, brain, spirit, and even soul, we do end up being comfortable in our own skin, having a voice, being comfortable being seen, felt, and heard. And so traditional Chinese medicine is all about yin and yang, right? We've all seen this symbol, the balance between really the positive and the negative. And everything in life have these qualities, really these designations of yin and yang. They're made in relation to one another. They are deeply interconnected cycles that can never, ever be separated. And they're also reciprocal. So being able to acknowledge that even in TCM really does aim to restore that balance and harmony between these opposing forces that exist within us and in everything that exists outside of us. So even, for example, in TCM, the belief that our energy or our chi is blocked, that blocked energy begins to create a mass. They can look at it as it can even contribute to us developing and manifesting diseases such as cancer. And so it's based on these 5 elements of medicine, and I will go through them quickly. Just understand that the 5 elements are similar to the 5 elements that are found in Ayurveda, and they're all interconnected. So here we know that water nourishes wood and restrains fire. Wood generates fire as fuel for combustion and inhibits earth by covering it. Fire generates earth by turning matter to ash and restraining metal by heating and melting it. And earth generates and supports metal by forming minerals, but restrains water by damming and absorbing it. And metal generates and vitalizes water by permeating it with all these refined substances and minerals. And it also restrains and inhibits wood by cutting it. Now, I don't expect anyone to remember or maybe even to absorb that, but just being able to understand a little bit about the 5 elements might be able to better help you appreciate some things that are going on in this slide. Because for me, this slide really captures the mind-body medicine connection to getting to the root sometimes of what ails us. So for instance, if you look to the section on the screen where you see the earth, it's represented in our body through our spleen, our stomach, and our pancreas. So when we have issues, which that happens to be in the 3rd chakra, like impaired digestion, gut issues, which the gut microbiome, immune health, and mental health are very interconnected. And I won't be able to have time to go into that in the presentation today, but realize that there is a deep connection there. And I'm so excited about the research that is coming out about that. But I also want you to understand that if you're someone who experiences a lot of worry, anxiety, or you've had early childhood trauma that make trust in yourself and in your world difficult, you may actually manifest issues that show up in your digestive system. Now, for a number of people that I've had the opportunity to work with, they have issues in their lungs, even in their skin. Well, the lungs are the area where unresolved depression gets trapped. And in fact, for clients that I've seen and worked with that have breast cancer, there is this theory that on a mind-body medicine level, that for people that experience breast cancer, part of one of the contributing factors could have to do with unresolved grief and loss, sadness, and depression, right? I also work with a lot of people that experience kidney issues. Well, the area of the body from TCM that holds emotion is the emotion connected to fear. And so I thought most of us have experienced fear. And since the COVID and post-COVID life experiences that we have all dealt with, fear and mental health are like on top of mind for everyone, including, by the way, if you never experienced any of your own mental health symptoms before. The other piece that I want to focus on that I think is really important here on this slide is our liver. We know that our liver is a vital organ in our body, but did you know that according to TCM, your liver is the place where perhaps you are holding on to unresolved anger? And it may show up in things like fatty liver, metabolic issues, etc. And if we look at our body as a metaphor, what if we tuned into ourselves and we thought about, am I someone who struggles to let go of things that no longer serve me, whether they contribute to the narrative that I tell myself, those beliefs, attitudes, etc., about my life? And then how might I be able to be open even a little bit to getting a better understanding for some of these medicines so that I can begin to practice some of the self-care things that any of these ancient medicines promote and inspire and encourage us to use? So how do I bridge it all together with people? Well, this is all about transition, right? We know that transition, according to Webster, is basically what I have here on the screen. It's a movement, a development, a change, an evolution from one stage to a place to another. But guess what? Transition is also spiritual. It is something that involves this process of, for many of us, intense disorientation and reorientation that are required for us. We call it in spirit medicine the dark night of the soul. Nobody really wants to raise their hand and volunteer for that. But I think to some degree what COVID did is that it forced us all to experience life transitions, because like we said, every one of us was dealing with something before we heard the word COVID, and now it's part of our regular vocabulary. So some of the characteristic effects of transitions, well, they rarely come at a time that's convenient for you, right? They often disrupt your day-to-day. They can serve as really important signals for us, shifts that are occurring inside of ourselves and in our outside world. They are often challenging. They really make us look at how we deal with adversity, and they do force us to look at those negative and positive aspects of things. Every transition involves at least 3 phases. Most people do not know that transitions do not begin with a new beginning. They actually start with an ending of some kind, a letting go, if you will, of the old before we're able to pick up the new. That's why those stages of grief are paramount. That's why we experiencing them as a loss in some way. The second phase is always neutral. We call it the in-between. And for many of us, for me included, it is one of my least favorite phases of transition because it is so darn discombobulating. It can leave us feeling empty, confused, disoriented. But have faith. If you are someone who is in this phase right now, just know that like the seasons, it will change, and it is letting you know as a signal that it's the advent for you of a new beginning that is on your horizon. And so illness is a transition, right? For every one of you that has been granted a cancer diagnosis, like I say to people, oh my goodness, that is like admission into a club that nobody really ever wants to be admitted into. And so many people that I've worked with who are cancer survivors, cancer patients, they say, oh my goodness, I originally was Sue or Bill or Bob, and then this happens to me, and now I am this person who is this cancer patient. So I encourage you to check in with yourself, ask yourself, how have I reacted to my diagnosis? Did I feel confused, unsure, perplexed, disoriented, bewildered? What about after your treatment ends? So that concept of after the bell. Some people that speak to me also tell me, you know what? I was relieved, but I also felt some of these very same things. Well, there's something else I want to tell you. Almost every single one of these emotions, these experiences, are what people were talking to me about as a result of COVID and how that impacted their lives. So there's this multi-layering effect, we call it a kindling effect in trauma, that just increases and exacerbates what you're already going through. So maybe you felt fear, depression, anxiety. If you already suffered with those particular experiences, it got worse. We know what stress is, right? There are positive aspects of stress, there are negative aspects of stress. I want you to realize that COVID itself is the overlay that gets added on top of all of these other components that contribute to our own internal stress response, as well as how we behave externally. And changes in our health status are pretty much at the top of the list. And COVID has made us all, to some degree or other, experience some level of persistent worry and a fear of getting sick, caused us to feel unstable. Like I have actually had people that have germ phobia, obsessive compulsive disorder, that were already diagnosed. And you know, understandably, some of them said, I actually feel better since the advent of COVID, because now I feel like everyone else finally understands what I go through every day. And I thought, yes, this is why mental health and breaking the stigma of it needs to really happen, because we are all experiencing this to some degree. Some people, believe it or not, experience relief, including when they are given a life-changing diagnosis, because what they've said to me is, I no longer feel crazy. Intuitively, I felt like something big was wrong. And now someone finally told me that there was. Or for the population, the segment of the population that came and talked to me during COVID, boy, I feel relieved, because what it did was it completely wiped out my personal life calendar, right? Self-quarantining, isolation. And they said, I didn't know it until those things were gone, how much my life was geared in a way that was stressful to me. And I didn't even know it. And so we know the impact of stress. If we can keep it in this positive range, it helps us to have better performance. We know this. And if we're able to keep stress at a tolerable level, and it's buffered by those supportive relationships, so like Dr. Mehta talked about, it's really the isolation that has so significantly contributed negatively to our overall health and wellness. Because no matter what area of medicine you've ever been in, research continues to show that having some level of social support, no matter what the intervention was, no matter what the treatment was, social support is an important factor in improving our health and wellness. Now, when we've experienced the toxic levels of stress, which for so many of us, what did 18 plus months do of COVID experience, now we're in post-COVID life, which is just part of whatever our new normals are. That prolonged stress response has really contributed to this overactivation in our sympathetic nervous system. What has that done? It's contributed to inflammation in our body, which when inflammation is acute, it's a healing tool. It's a wrecking ball. We need it to some degree. But when it lasts for too long, it contributes to the things you see on the right-hand side of the slide, which have to do with things like cancer, autoimmune disease. Something that's not yet shown on this slide also has to do with our gut health. So for me, it's also about teaching you without, so many people don't even realize it. Believe it or not, research has shown that inflammation is an underlying factor in most mental health issues, specifically depression. So I am all about helping people understand ways that you can use mind-body medicine interventions to decrease your stress response, to therefore decrease your inflammation, because this is a really important part. It is a common denominator in most illnesses, conditions, and diseases. So how do you use integrative mental health to heal yourself? We look at these 4 pillars of lifestyle medicine, and Dr. Mehta hinted at them. So we know it's about finding regular ways every day that you can manage your stress, being able to identify ways to boost your sense of love, support, relationships in your life. Nutrition and dietary lifestyle is very, very important, using food as medicine. That includes vitamins, supplements, etc. And being able to have some component of fitness and exercise in your life. Journaling, to me, is a major, major component of health and wellness, according to Mind Body Medicine. So many people say to me, oh, I'm intimidated by journaling. No, I don't think that I could do it because I'm not good at it, right? That's your ego talking. Journaling, if nothing else, is a way for you to capture things that are too hard for our thinking mind to remember. But journaling can also be a spiritual experience for you as well. It helps you capture the things that your subconscious wants you to be able to explore. So I want to just share with you, because I do believe, I'm glad that this is in recorded mode, so you'll get to review some of these slides as well. I want always to give you more tools for your toolkit. I'm a firm believer we can never have enough tools. So many of you might be familiar with acupuncture. Well, acupressure basically uses some of the same acupuncture points, but with no needles. I'm also an auricular acupuncturist as well. So I am believing so much in how we can keep using some of these self-care practices to decrease our stress response. And so you'll see on this slide, this is considered the joining the valley, or the LI4 point. I just want to say, as a caveat, you'll see on the screen, a lot of people don't take alternative medicine seriously, but you really need to, because if you happen to be pregnant, you really don't want to use this at the time, because it's been shown to maybe induce labor for some women. But this particular acupressure point has been found to be very effective to help with muscle tension, headaches. A lot of cancer patients even use it to help them manage the side effects of chemotherapy and to relieve pain. Another very popular acupressure point is what we called C17, Sea of Tranquility. It's actually located right in the center of your breastplate, as you can see there on the diagram. And this is very useful mind-body medicine technique to help decrease your fear, your anxiety, your nervousness. And it can really help give us this calming effect. And it can be used to regulate yourself when you feel distressed. And what's beautiful is it helps activate that thymus gland. Now, I'm all about helping you with mindset too, because we have to be able to set intentions. So what I want you to realize is this: you have so much power already in your mind if you didn't already know it. And one of the ways that we have power in our mind is to be able to look at what the heck is going on up there in the first place. So many people do what Aaron Rodgers would have called shooting on ourselves. Aaron Rodgers, that's so funny. I always get the wrong name. It's Carl Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is probably a baseball player. But Carl Rodgers would call it shooting on ourselves. And it sounds exactly the way it is. How many of you out there, I admit I do it too, should on ourselves regularly in our mind? You know, should is rarely, if ever, connected to anything that I'm doing well. So I encourage you, slow down, tune inward, notice the number of shoulds that show up in your mind every day. Begin to identify some of the themes, because they probably are connected to different situations, relationships. They're connected to those things I talked about earlier, the beliefs, experiences, attitudes, values that have influenced us, whether we know it or not. And give yourself permission to stop shoulding on yourself. If that's one takeaway I hope that you get from my presentation, I want to thoroughly encourage people to stop shoulding on themselves every day. The power of the positive. I say to people, yes, positive psychology is a real field. It shows real benefit. Just being able to look at what were some of the positive things that maybe have happened to you, not only since COVID and post-COVID, but even for some of the clients that I've had the blessing to work with that have been given a cancer diagnosis. I've had some people say to me, Wow, being able to better understand myself, heal and let go of what no longer serves me, heal those unresolved components has allowed me to heal, because we know there's a difference between healing and curing, including even if they still have a cancer diagnosis. So I really encourage you to use the time to increase your self-awareness, connect with what matters to you inside yourself as well as outside, and always tap into and lean into what inspires you most. I want to support your mind and body wellness. And by doing that, I encourage you to rebuild that personal to-do calendar, because we all needed to, right? But before you do, ask yourself this: does it light me up? If it doesn't, do yourself a favor, wipe out the shoulds that are in your mind, and really think twice before you plug it into your calendar. For those who want to take it further, this is a little bit of a suggestion on a journal entry. Later, get out your journal, jot down 2 to 4 feelings that you want to feel every day in 2022. Create your own definitions for them, not the Webster definition or anybody else's definition, yours. And then write out those feelings, including your definition, every week in your journal. It will help you to internalize them on mind, body, brain, and spirit levels, which then increases the likelihood that you'll manifest them in your life going forward. I've included this slide because I help many clients empower them on how to talk to their other healthcare practitioners, to have a voice with their doctors, with their providers, being able to ask what might be causing my symptoms, what treatment options do I have, what might be the benefits and side effects, do you offer lifestyle medicine, what can I do myself to feel better, right? This is about empowering you as well. What kind of supports are available to me? What might each option cost? Will my insurance cover it? Because I'm well aware with integrative medicine, oftentimes the medicines that I'm practicing and promoting, they might not be as recognized by the randomized clinical trials that are supported and promoted in traditional allopathic medicine. But we do know that that doesn't mean that they don't work. So we have to be open and curious to be able to find ways to integrate this in as many ways as we are comfortable with in our life. And so what I'd like to do at this point, I'd like to invite you to sit comfortably wherever you are, feet flat on the floor, and close your eyes, because now I am going to lead you in this brief mudra. And mudras are gestures. They are very powerful components of Ayurvedic medicine. And I chose this mudra, this Abdaya Vajra mudra. It is known as a gesture for fearlessness and granting wishes. And I love it because I chose it specifically for our group to help you balance your Vata dosha, to help you decrease your fear, anxiety, and promote a deep calming effect for you. And so what I want you to do is, with your left hand slightly cupped, hold it below your belly button. And if you need to, you can look at the screen briefly. That's why I included the diagram. You can rest your hand in your lap if it's comfortable. You can hold your right hand up. You can even rest your elbow on your arm of your chair, if that's comfortable for you as well. And I want you to relax your shoulders back and down, because as we practice this mudra, we will begin to direct our breath and our awareness into our pelvis and our pelvic floor. This is helpful for our elimination system, as well as spiritually, to allow us to let go what no longer serves us. It helps us to be more grounded and centered. And it really helps us to balance, open and clear those first 2 chakras that I spoke about, that can help us increase our sense of safety and our groundedness and our sense of self-nourishment. So as you hold this mudra, let us take breaths now together, in and out, to attune all of our feelings and sensations that may be evoked by this gesture. Let us breathe in and out, giving yourself permission to elongate each exhale, noticing how your breath is being gently directed into your pelvis, instilling a sense of centering that's allowing you to journey confidently in this moment. Breathing in and out. Noticing how we are able to deepen our sense of centering by visualizing ourselves at the beginning of a trail, perhaps in completely new surroundings. As we begin this journey, sensing with each of our steps, firmly supported by the earth beneath, that we are able to move forward surely and steadily with trust and confidence. Breathing in and out. Noticing that we are more and more supported by the earth and centered within our being. Noticing how we are able to inhabit our physical body now more completely, allowing us to feel fully present at each step along this journey. And as you move forward steadily, noticing how you are able to attune yourself to the rhythmic nature of your breathing in and out, naturally deepening your sense of centering, of trust, of safety in this moment. Becoming still more attuned to your body and your breath, your connection to the earth, deepening naturally now this sense of oneness with all of your surroundings, allowing you to journey forward with greater security and safety. Noticing as you continue along your way that you see in the distance, in your mind's eye, an area of a dense forest, a tunnel of trees where no light is entering. You may notice yourself hesitating just for a moment, but then give yourself permission to reconnect with the steady flow of your breath. Connect to the support of the earth beneath your feet and to your sense of centering inside of yourself as well as outside, noticing now that you are able to continue forward confidently. Once you are within the shade of these sheltering trees, your sense of oneness with the earth beneath you allows any remaining fear to be released, to be discharged, let go. And you journey on now with a significantly deepened and renewed sense of safety and trust. Soon you come to a clearing where you see sunlight shimmering through the leaves, and at the very center, you are inspired by the sight of an ancient, majestic tree. And as you come nearer, you find a hollow within its huge trunk and its roots, forming walls and a roof that invite you to sit in this natural room. As you sit, you sense your roots reaching deep into the earth, allowing you in this moment to become one with this ancient tree, naturally deepening your sense of centering and groundedness. You are now fully centered within your being and deeply connected to the earth beneath you. You are resting in this moment in absolute tranquility, fully supported along your life journey. We want to affirm your centering as I invite you to repeat in your mind's eye with me the following mantra or prayer silently 3 times. One with the earth and centered within my being, I journey in complete safety. One with the earth and centered within my being, I journey into complete safety. One with the earth and centered within my being, I journey in complete safety. And as you slowly release the gesture, perhaps allowing your palms to lay gently face up in your lap, give yourself permission to take a few low and slow breaths in and out, really savoring this moment of rest in absolute tranquility, being able to connect to the divine energy and wisdom within you and outside of you, connecting it to the earth beneath you, as well as to the sky and cosmos above, feeling deeply held in this beautiful, energetic, and spiritual cocoon. Breathing it in, allowing every cell in your body to take it in to whatever degree is comfortable for you. And then when you are ready, give yourself permission to open your eyes, returning slowly and gently to the space between us, allowing yourself to really integrate this sense of centering into all of your activities later today and even throughout your weeks ahead. And then when you are here and present, I invite you to smile, because the brain, the mind, body, and soul love when we join together in this medicine and really capture it in that smile. Wonderful. Well, and as you all are gently returning, I just want to say from the depths actually of my soul, because I am living my soul's purpose by sharing this medicine with you, I am grateful to have been able to hold space, to create space with you and for you, and hope that even in some ways, even small, that we've been able to sort of raise your vibration just a little bit more. And I look forward to being able to take part as a participant in the sound healing. And for any of you who, I will certainly be here for questions, but if you need more information, you will also have ways to contact me as well. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Carolyn. That was wonderful. Excuse me. I feel more calm. So that's great.
I love it.
Thank you. Yes. So I do have a couple of questions for you. And I just thought they were really nice, the way that you brought us all into this space, and you have a lot of different areas of practicing. But I thought that the most interesting thing that you said to me, and everybody's different, had to do with creating a voice for how to speak to your other practitioners.
Yes.
Because that's an area that I think we all, or at least I, have trouble speaking up to, or actually saying to my practitioner what's wrong or how I feel, or maybe they don't want to hear that type of thing. So I really liked that part of it.
Wonderful.
We do have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
So can you go back to the acupressure? And you were showing us this acupressure. Now, I have not had acupuncture or acupressure. but I have seen acupuncture and it looks like they leave the needles in for a period of time. So is this acupressure also a period of time? And are we talking 5 seconds or 2 hours?
Oh, wonderful question. And thank you so much, because it's like everything in a presentation. I have so much information that I forget and leave some of the most important pieces out, right? And so, yes, acupressure is similar to acupuncture, but what we notice is that if you hold, so if we look at that LI 4-point in that space between the thumb and the pointer, if you relax yourself and hold the point for anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes while you're breathing in, and then because the brain and the body, by the way, loves bilateral stimulation, I always say to people, please do the other side of your body as well for similar amounts of time. And that is because even in energy and spirit medicine, or in TCM and Ayurveda, because like I said, they've never separated out any of these components, we know that the left and right side of the body actually are symbolic of a number of things. So we really want to make sure we are addressing in our medicine both sides.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a comment that says, I am so impressed and moved by your presentation. I didn't write that, but I feel the same way.
Thank you.
Are there programs or practices available in Newcastle County? And are there retreats or workshops that you offer?
Oh, this is a great question, because honestly, one of the things that I can say has affected due to COVID, thankfully, we are able to be here virtually, right? Yeah. I am hoping that moving forward, we will be able to connect in person, because of believe it or not, my own story is I moved here to Delaware in 2018 to be able to really grow this medicine here in Delaware. And then I opened my practice. Now, granted, like we've said, I've had a practice in Connecticut where I was from, where I lived my whole life for 20 plus years. I opened my practice in April of 2019 in Milton. COVID hit in the beginning of 2020. So yes, I really do hope to offer in-person retreats, because I think we happen to have just some beautiful natural places here that invite us to do that. Also, I offer programs virtually, because as part of COVID, opening a brick and mortar practice, I had to really up my game, to say the least, in technology, so that I could be able to offer these things to people virtually. And I have the blessing of being able to have clients that are in other parts of the country as well. So virtual really does work nicely for people. I am not as familiar about what may be in Kent County, and that doesn't mean there isn't anything that exists. That's just because as a newer practitioner down here, plus what happened during COVID is even our availability to communicate and collaborate and network with one another as practitioners stopped. It really impacted that negatively. Okay. So I hope to be able to know more about that going forward.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So there was another person asked the same question. And the C17 point.
That was Sea of Tranquility.
Right. Now, is that a tapping or a pressure?
So for acupressure, also a great question, because tapping is another very effective form of energy medicine that often uses similar acupressure points. But yes, for the purpose of acupressure, it would be just taking your middle finger or your thumb, if that's more comfortable, and applying gentle but firm pressure. Nothing is supposed to hurt in acupressure. Okay, so similar thing, holding the point, being able to ground yourself, center, doing some breathing for about 2 to 3 minutes is usually pretty effective for people.
Okay, great. So now here's an interesting question. If one is feeling nothing happy, sad, etc., where or who and how do we start with getting back to ourselves when we can't verbalize how we feel or not feel?
Well, I can't see the names in the chat right on my screen right now, but whoever posed that question, thank you for posing it, because it is beautiful. Because what that tells me is, first, we need to be able to acknowledge that not everyone is able to have that connection yet to not only their body wisdom, but to their actual voice, where they can then say to any kind of practitioner, this is what is happening for me. So I say to people, if you are in that experience, you very likely are in what we call that survival brain stuff that I didn't talk a lot about today, but I certainly could in the future. It's that fight and flight, freeze and submit response. Freeze, by the way, is what happens in our body. It is the deer in the headlights. It's what we call tonic immobility, and we are actually frozen. And that's because some things in our brain, in our amygdala in our brain, have said danger, danger. And guess what? That's because the ancient part of our brain said talking is not going to help the saber-toothed tiger stop chasing us or stop from eating us in that ancestral way. So what I encourage people to do is have faith. The wisdom is in your body. So begin to explore simple things like relaxation, belly breathing. I could have also chosen to do a body scan meditation today, which just would have helped you to learn how to slow yourself down to get in your body. Because for many people, including people who are undergoing chemotherapy, you have to understand that part of your survival brain wants you to be out of your body, right? Literally like, I'm checking out of here. So oftentimes we have to start with basic body scan. You can also Google body scan, go on YouTube. There are thousands of people that are showing you ways just to use belly breathing, slow yourself down, bring yourself here, let your thinking mind just sort of take a pause, let the body tell you, what is it that I need to know right now? That's what I try to teach my clients. Talk to your symptoms. Your symptoms have wisdom, even if you don't know it. And then practice any of the different alternative things like yoga, sound therapy, massage therapy, acupuncture. I know I'm a healing touch practitioner, so even being able to do hands-on energy medicine can help bring things up. I'm a biofeedbacker that can help bring things up that your thinking mind can't quite grasp yet. I hope that provides some answer and not too much.
Thank you. That's great. I did notice that Cancer Support Community put into the chat a link to a wellness place in Wilmington. So anybody's interested in that, it's totalih.com. Thank you, Erica. Anybody else have any other questions for Dr. Carolyn? This has been so interesting, and there's so much I can't even grasp it all.
It is a lot. And that's why I say to people, it's just what we're doing. Don't worry that you're going to remember it all or need to know it all. Everything that needs to land and resonate already is happening inside of you. And just like Deepak Chopra says, right? Notice the whispers in the universe that you lean towards. So if there's something that really landed with you or made you go, even a little bit, follow that energy. Find ways to learn more about it. You certainly can reach out to me, but you can learn about a lot of different things in our community, in our online communities. And it is another way to be able to just keep opening curiosity and wonder. And I saw something just flashed on my screen. It asked if I have a website. I do. And I apologize because the screen that once I stopped sharing my screen, I noticed in that slide, I forgot to put my website. So my website is www.empoweredwellnesscoaching.com, and I can type it into the chat as well.
If you would do that, that'd be wonderful. We've gone a little bit over. I apologize,
Sorry about that,
ladies, but so Dr. Trasko, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Erica?
All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Trasko. That was a wonderful presentation. So I am Erica Narducci. I am the program director at Cancer Support Community, Delaware. We offer support through the emotional journey of cancer through support groups, mind-body stress reduction programs, and education. So you've made it to the last part of our program today. Congratulations. And as was mentioned, we are a little bit over, but we are going to provide you a full 30 minutes for our sound meditation. And that's going to conclude our time together today. So I encourage you just to use this time to process through the things that both Dr. Mehta and Dr. Trasco have said. And as was said, the things that have fallen on you, that have inspired you, maybe think about changes you want to incorporate in your own life, and just really experience this healing time of meditation. When she ends the meditation today, that will conclude the conference. I'm going to put back up the slides of our Sussex County Coalition members so that you have our contact information. And then I'll just end the Zoom meeting, and that will conclude our time. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Lampert. She is a certified sound therapist. She studied SEMA therapy in 2009 and received an intensive frequency and vibrational certification in 2018 with the International Sound Therapy Association. She's been a Reiki master for over 15 years and studied healing modules for more than 25 years. As a native of Delaware, she has also lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Atlanta, working in the film industry as a hairstylist, as well as using that time to continue her education with sound therapy. She's particularly interested in the treatment of stress and pain and investigating ways that sound therapy supports the mind, body, and spirit. She is very passionate about using sound as a tool for healing, relaxation, and transformation. And I can definitely attest to this, as we have been using Mary to offer sound meditation classes for Cancer Support Community Delaware for about 2.5, maybe a little longer years now. And we were able to adapt this protocol very easily to virtual means to reach as many people as possible. So when Mary, again, just reminding you, when she ends her meditation, that concludes our time together. I want to thank you for joining us. And Mary, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Erica. What an awesome program. So many of you have touched on things that I'm passionate about. So I'm really fortunate to follow that incredible meditation because I'm relaxed. So I'm going to give you a little background here with frequencies, and just to remind everyone that we are energy and frequencies. And so we absorb things in our environment. And as far as frequencies, the food you eat has a frequency. You might find, oh, I don't feel so good after I ate that. Pay attention to the foods and of course the healthy foods that will be posted. The smells, the scents, the things that we put on our body is a frequency. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't. Just the jewels that we wear, a gem, a crystal, this is all from the earth, and it carries a frequency into our energy field. So how I've approached my healing technique or my protocol here is it's important about breathing. And it was touched on both of the programs today. And so I'd like to start with some breath work. And so if you're relaxed and comfy in your chair by now, just take a couple deep breaths. And everyone has maybe studied different types of breathing. And I like to extend the exhale. And of course, slow your breath down because your nervous system follows your breath. So as you slow your breath down, your nervous system, which is what we want to deal with, starts to drop. So let's take a couple deep breaths and release it like you were fogging a mirror or you're cleaning your glasses, kind of a ha. And let it ride as long as you can. Don't force it. It's going to drop and return. This is life force. Now, move your attention to the breath, the air coming into your nose. Feel that warmth and that air. And now I'd like to introduce a hum that will just ride on your exhale. It's just going to float on the top. And a hum is very important. It activates a 10th cranial nerve, your vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, called the wandering nerve, it touches, it's the only nerve in your body that touches every organ. And when you activate this nerve by humming, which is you can actually put your hand at your chest and you can feel that vibration in your body. When you activate this, it releases a nitric oxide. That's a molecule. It's nitrogen and oxide. And it's in every living thing. And it arcs every 6 minutes. And so when you think of your body, we want to get out of the sympathetic, the fight and flight. Our adrenals from this past, well, few years and maybe even before, our adrenals are depleted and we now think that that's normal and we function on that level. That is not good to have all of that stress on that level in our body. So we want to relax and let that shift of the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. So I'd like you to go ahead and add that hum. And if you'd like to visualize, I was thinking the green, the heart chakra, green, because it's love. And love is very powerful for healing and for the planet. Let's give our breath a color. Just a long inhale and add the hum. Your jaw's going to be relaxed. You're going to feel a little vibration in your lips. Now, humming you can do while you're in the kitchen, in the shower, taking a walk. It is we can have this be a part of our life. 5 minutes every day, your cells will thank you. And being outdoors now that we have this incredible weather, the Earth's frequency is 7.8 hertz, and so is the brain. The Earth might be in fluctuation because of all the things that are going on and the cell towers, but basically being outdoors is very healthy and very soothing. Ask any gardener. So continue with your breath, and with each breath, drop a little deeper in your chair. Just relax. go back into your thoughts. Move your focus back to your breath. And know the frequencies know where to go. All we have to do is let our brain reach for the sound. I'd like you to slowly bring your attention back to your breath. Slow, deep inhale. Inhaling through your nose. This wonderful green light. And now bring your attention to your physical body, the vehicle that carries us through our day. Feel the chair at your back, your legs on the floor. And start to move your fingers and your toes, just defining your space again in your physical body. And remembering that our thoughts are frequencies and that we are who we are, one thought at a time. And to be aware of the things that don't fit into our lives, the things that make us anxious, and be able to let them go so there's room for the goodness of life. One thought at a time. Thank you all for joining me with this meditation and the programs that the cancer community has offered. I honor the divine in all of you. Namaste.